to our look ahead to what the papers are bringing us tomorrow. We're joined tonight by Isabel Hardman, assistant editor of The Spectator. Good evening to you, Isabel. We're also joined by another regular face of the papers, Jim Waterson, BuzzFeed's deputy editor. Welcome. Let's just have a look at some of the front pages before we talk about them in detail. This is the FT. A picture there of Sepp Blatter at the opening ceremony of the 65th FIFA Congress, and reports that the corruption scandal threatens to entangle its sponsor Nike. According to the Metro, it's time for Mr. Blatter to step down. To get better, whilst the Sun reports on attempts to depose the FIFA president and calls for his head on a platter. The Guardian truncates Mr. Blatter's own words. It says, "We cannot allow the shame to go on any longer, so I'll stay." And the Mail reports that 2 UK banks could be embroiled in the scandals. The 79-year-old is also pictured on the front of the Daily Telegraph, but the paper leads with the news that UN health targets could lead to a second-class NHS for the over-70s. Well, as you'd expect, FIFA continues to dominate, but the focus increasingly on Sepp Blatter. And the headline in The Guardian does play on his words, as I was just saying there. We cannot allow the shame to go on any longer. That's pretty much what he said in his speech today. But he also says, so I'll stay. And as the Guardian reflects, there's a lot of people saying he shouldn't. Yeah,
and I suppose at face value, that Guardian headline's fantastic, isn't it? Because it sort of sums up the strange contradiction in FIFA. It initially appears to be a complete lack of self-awareness from Sepp Blatter, that possibly as the head of an organisation he might want to take responsibility, but actually there's a deep awareness there that nothing can be done to get rid of him, that the re-election that he's seeking should be successful for him, and therefore why, if you care more about yourself than about the reputation of your organisation or indeed the future of football, why would you bother standing down? You might as well just continue.
And for all that we get het up about it in Western Europe and all the rest, we're pretty much the only ones who get angry about these bids being taken by Russia and Qatar. Most of the rest of the world is pretty happy in terms of the football keeps getting played, their local associations keep getting the money from FIFA, the earth turns and Sepp Blatter gets re-elected for yet another term.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a long time, fans have felt that allegations have been made. We've heard, actually, you lose count how many times we've heard Sepp Blatter make similar speeches to the one he's made today. But to both of you, does this feel different?
Well, I think now that we're also picking through papers that have been served by the US Department of Justice, I think the story has notched up quite a level. I remember actually talking about this pretty much this time last year when some of the allegations started to surface. But I think now that we've got arrests and now we've got papers that are naming certain banks and sponsors, now it's starting to get a little bit more serious. But as you say, we don't really know where this is going to go.
Well, you say it's getting serious, but some of the headlines will cause some smirks. I've tried my best reading them tonight. Let's just show the Sun. Give me his head on a Blatter. And referring to the comments of UEFA chief Michel Platini today as well, because he was actually an ally, wasn't he, of Sepp Blatter?
Yeah, originally Platini helped Blatter get elected back in the day, but has now belatedly realised that this isn't a great look to be alongside him and that most of the UEFA members have had enough. But obviously not Russia, who are one of the ones who've hosted one of the World Cups that's been awarded under intriguing circumstances in 2018.
And he actually asked him to step down today, didn't he?
Yeah, he went into the meeting with Blatter this morning, and David Gill, the former Manchester United chief exec, has also said that he'll not take up his place on FIFA's executive committee if Blatter is re-elected. But that's all in vain if the rest of the world continues to back the man who's consistently provided the goods to them over the best part of 2 decades.
We've got to remind ourselves, Sepp Blatter has not been arrested, he's not implicated, he's the man, he's the top boss. Some people say, and this is pretty much what the Sun is saying in other papers, well, if he didn't know about it, then he's an inept president of FIFA and he should go, and if he did know about it, then he was part of the corruption and should go. It does suggest, doesn't it, that headlines like this aren't going to go away if he's elected president again tomorrow.
No, I don't think
I don't think they will, but it's again whether they can actually get the man out of the office that they're targeting.
One of the things I found quite entertaining as a political journalist is throughout today I've received statements from various parties calling on Sepp Blatter to stand down. I've had it from Lib Dems, as though he's going to go, oh no, Tim Farron's come out against me, I really should worry now.
The deputy leader of UKIP has put out a statement calling for Sepp Blatter to go, which I'm sure will be the one thing that in Switzerland has some quaking. boots.
Well, the Daily Mail is one of a couple of papers that actually brings a majorly new development to the story, that brings it much closer to home, actually, not just our failed bid to host the World Cup, but that UK banks are now being named in the football bribery scandal, according to the Daily Mail. It goes to show that, as well as the pressure on SEP, the actual investigation's got some length, hasn't it, in it?
Yeah, and at the moment, given some of the fines that are being doled out by US Justice Departments to banks, I'd be pretty worried about being implicated in anything. I mean, there's some banks who sort of face massive fines for... And it's always that they unknowingly were failing to do the checks on the money that was going through them, and this is probably what's being probed here.
But we don't know if they knew. We don't know if the Barclays or HSBC
knew. The whole point
knew.
is that it's whether or not they did the right checks, which will be what they're probing.
But it's also a way of continuing a story when actually very little has changed. Someone has said they're not stepping down, but actually what's new is that some papers have been served that say that suspect transactions linked to FIFA were allegedly moved through these banks' accounts. It's more people implicated, more people who need to respond to what's going on. It's another way of keeping the pressure up, basically. The
Daily Mail also saying that Britain's Serious Fraud Office is understood to be monitoring the situation and ready to help the US authorities. But a couple of other papers are saying that they are now actually investigating as well, but we're not able to clarify that. But Barclays and HSBC, the two banks named so far, but they might have had no idea that the money was involved in any kind of corruption. That's why they'll be investigating. Another pressure for Sepp Blatter and FIFA itself appears on the front page of the FT. This is the sponsors, isn't it, Isabel? Well,
this is interesting because Nike aren't named specifically in the documents. They're referred to as Sportswear Company A or E, but the FT says, but the deal by the unnamed company described in the two indictments appears identical to the one signed by Nike and CBF, which is the Brazilian Football Federation, in 1996.
Is it Nike or Nike?
I'm going with Nike.
I think the Brits say Nike and the Americans say Nike, and Isabel, evidently.
Well, we might be completely wrong.
I think we're both right. I think we're all right. I mean, Nike have released a statement this evening, and there's been quite a few statements coming out from sponsors this evening, but they're not willing to put anyone forward to talk, but they say, like fans everywhere, we care passionately about the game and we're concerned about the very serious allegations. Nike believes in ethical and fair play in both business and sport and strongly opposes any form of manipulation or bribery. We have been cooperating, we'll continue to cooperate with the authorities. Other statements from sponsors are just calling for change, calling for transparency, but no sign of that pressure people expected.
No, well, I mean, one of my colleagues at BuzzFeed, Heidi Blake, who used to be at the Sunday Times and broke a lot of this material a year or two ago, I think it's fair to say that the sponsors have been aware of many of these allegations for some time, and they don't actually seem in a rush to withdraw those massive contracts. I think they might be waiting to see whether this one blows over, whether Sepp gets back in, because the enormous value of having your name at every pitch side in every World Cup match versus, you know, the morality of pulling out and doing the right thing in the eyes of a few newspapers in Western Europe, they don't necessarily